Introducing myself, I'm Kim Melvan, owner of RunCoachPT here in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And in anticipation of the next running workshop that's coming up October 21st, which is focused all around training and race preparation, I really wanted to get a good sense of how to incorporate your nutrition and your fueling as part of that training strategy. So I'm trying to bring in experts in that field because that is not what my background is in. So I'm speaking today with George Parker, founder of Peregrune, and he is here to tell us all about his multivitamin and supplement that is specific for runners. So George, first thing I want to ask is, am I pronouncing the name correctly?
You nailed it, Peregrune. You got it absolutely right.
Okay, and how did you come up with the name?
How did I come up with the name? Well, so first of all, thank you. Thanks for having me on here. I'm excited to talk for a little bit and to share the information that I have with your runners, because I think at some point in our running journey, we start thinking about nutrition. I wish I had thought about it a lot sooner, and so I'm glad we're able to talk about it. How did I come up with the name? Well, I remember when we were researching it, I was looking for what the fastest land animal was. And the fastest land animal actually in a free dive is the peregrine falcon. And so then Peregrune became a play on that. But the interesting story, the further backstory, is the reason I had to do that is when I first started the business, and this was back in 2016, and we can talk more about this, but I wasn't trying to start a company at all. I was just scratching an itch that I personally had. And so when I made the product, I made 48 bottles just for myself. I had a background in chemistry. I was a chemical engineer. And I had just named it something. I named it Gap Vitamin because my initials are George Arthur Parker. I just thought that was great because I was making it just for myself. It was going to sit on my shelf. But turns out there's a clothing company called Gap. And so
there is. I've heard of it.
Yeah. And so shortly thereafter of me creating the product just for myself, and then I did post it online just to see if someone would purchase it, I got legal action from Gap. And Gap said, hey, this is our mark. And so I engaged the attorney. The attorney said, you could probably win this, but what's it worth to you? And so then I went on a journey to find the fastest land animal, which led me to the peregrine falcon, which then led to the clever name Peregrune, which in hindsight, this is all good. I like the name a lot better. And so I'm glad this happened to me, but that is how the name came about. It's an interesting story.
That's great. And how do, what kind of sets this vitamin apart? You know, as a runner, especially as people who are new to running, get into nutrition and trying to make sure their body is well fueled for, any training that they're going to be doing. Why should they pick your vitamin over, another one?
Yeah, it's a great question. And just to give you kind of the background, I never really paid much attention to nutrition until I turned about 40. Running was the only hobby I kept after we had kids. And when I turned 40, I started paying a lot more attention to all aspects of running. The most important thing has always been to eat healthy, to eat, a balanced meal, to eat the right ingredients, to eat whole foods. There's no question that's the most important thing. But I started experimenting around with supplements outside of that because we don't eat healthy every day. There's a lot of things going on. We're chasing kids, work, whatever. It's very difficult. And so I just started experimenting, buying things from the grocery store, from the drugstore, from the GNC, the vitamin shops, and I put together a really good regimen. I was taking probably 12 different bottles of stuff. And the reason is because I was sort of trying to piecemeal exactly what I needed for a runner, because most vitamin companies are making it for the mainstream shopper that goes to grocery stores, but runners are different. So that was sort of the basis. I was taking 12 different things, and I thought to myself, this is really complicated. It's time consuming. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of space in the cabinet. I should be able to simplify this. As I mentioned before, I had a background in chemistry. I was a chemical engineer from Georgia Tech. I said I should be able to design a formula based upon the needs I'm looking for, as opposed to kind of piecing it together. So that's what I did. I sat down, I wrote out the formula. I found a manufacturer that could help me bring it to life. I made 48 bottles, and that was 7 years ago now. Right on Thanksgiving Day is when I put it online to sell, first on Amazon. 2 weeks later, a lady purchased it. She's still a customer. And now almost 4 million vitamins later to thousands of runners across the US. That's sort of where we are, including one name change.
That's awesome. And what would you say to someone who's hesitant to take a supplement? You and I spoke on this earlier. Me personally, I don't like to take a lot of extra things. Ideally, you get everything that you need from what you're eating and drinking throughout the day, but we both know that is not reality. That's not real life for most people. So what would you say to someone who's hesitant to take something, aside from what they're taking in with normal food during the day?
I would say experiment. I think the first thing is exactly like you said, Kim, which is the most important thing is eat your whole foods, right? So look at your diet. Make sure you're eating the amount of fish that you need every week to get the omega-3s. Make sure that you're eating vegetables and all the things that you should be doing. And a supplement is just that. A supplement should be a supplement to your existing diet. No multivitamin is going to cure a diet that is 6 days a week, like my kids eat chicken nuggets and pizza, right? Like you can't do that. But the purpose of a supplement is just that. It is to supplement what we're doing, because even if we are eating healthy, what I've seen in my experience, and a lot of our runners as well, is that you might be eating the same thing every day. And so you don't have as much nutrient diversity as you could. Mm-hmm. Or it's hard to be perfect every day because most of our runners, we're not pro athletes. We're balancing life, work, and career, which means that you can just imagine the things that we have to do just to get through the day. And so we're not always eating perfectly every day. If you are, you probably don't need a supplement. And then that's great. But if you're like most of us and most of our runners, a supplement can help with that. And then I would say experiment. And what I always say is the first thing you should do is start with a multivitamin. A multivitamin is just a nice base level of insurance. If you can take any multivitamin, that's probably a good place to start. But if you are a runner, I would encourage you to look at our runner multivitamin because there's differences about the formula we can talk about. But the first thing is I always say, hey, just start with any multivitamin. That's going to be a good place for you to have a nice level of insurance. And then second thing is when you look at your medical history and your family or things like that, consider other things that might be useful. In my family, heart health was something that was very important. And so the other one that I know my diet was lacking on was omega-3s, things that you get in fish oil. And so that became something as well. And then the third one that I would then encourage people to look at is, hey, look at something for your joints, right? If you're looking for an active mobile lifestyle for as long as possible, the things you can do to take care of your joints are only going to be helpful to you.
Yeah. And you touched on this a little bit, but you are very open and honest about what's in your vitamins, in your supplements. The label is there, readily available. And when I looked at it, I saw that there were some of those vitamins that had significantly higher daily value percentages. So how did you come up with the formula that you came up with? Why are some of those vitamins found in such high percentages? If you can kind of touch on that.
Mm-hmm. The daily value amounts are set based upon the average adults and the average activity, the average lifestyle of the mainstream adult. But runners are very different, right? Runners are far more active than the average adult that the values are set upon. They use more energy. They work their muscles and joints harder. They sweat away more nutrients. And so when you look at some of the values, the reason that they're higher is that the activity level of a runner in general is far higher than what the daily values are based upon. And as a result, what that translates into is much higher amounts of vitamin Bs, which are the vitamins that are responsible for the cellular energy production, ATP, as well as antioxidants, vitamin C and E, which neutralize the free radicals created from any activity, especially running, that cause inflammation and they attack the tissues in the joints. So that is why it's different, because you're different and runners are different.
And jumping off of that and differences between runners and maybe, the average American, do you think you'll ever make a separate vitamin specific for women? I know there's a lot of stuff out there that's kind of being tailored more towards women. Is that something that you guys have on your radar?
So I looked at, when we had first met, you had asked that question, and I thought it was a really good question. So I went back and I looked at our customer data. Today, we're about 60% women and 40% men that are taking our multivitamin. So in one way, it actually kind of is a oriented, but that wasn't the goal. The goal was to generate a vitamin that was first and foremost designed for the needs of runners. I do recognize that there are differences where women sometimes need additional vitamins, additional minerals, especially. But not all those minerals, such as iron or calcium, are needed by all women or all men, and they're not needed at all times during the year. And so the idea of the multivitamin is it's hard to make it perfect for everybody.
Yeah.
It's already more perfect for runners than your average multivitamin, which is a big difference. And so if there is an additional need, such as if you're a female runner and you're like, hey, I have a history of low iron or I have a history of low calcium, the best solution then probably would be to take the multivitamin and an additional supplement during periods when the iron is low, or over a certain age if you feel like you need additional calcium.
And I think this is important, not even just for runners, but in general, to speak to a nutritionist if you're concerned or you're even just curious about, what are my individual needs. That's how you're going to figure that out. Go to a professional. They can tell you, do the, the blood work, whatever's needed to figure out, okay, you're low in this, you might need this, and then, and then go from there.
Yeah. And I think the broader point here, which is something that I wish I would have learned earlier, and which is why I love these series that you're putting together, is that when you're a runner, it can feel like a solo individual sport.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not a team sport like baseball, go Braves, or football or something like that. But when you really think about it, there can be a whole team of people that are supporting you. And so, for instance, having a running coach, right? That's going to be a great idea for you as you look to continue to chase goals. And then you can start adding other people to your team, whether it is a nutritionist or a product like a multivitamin. But then you can start saying, well, hey, let me really make sure that I'm addressing muscular imbalances, right? And that's what having a physical therapist that you consult with is very helpful. Maybe you need to work with a massage therapist. So like as you build, you can realize that being a runner is more than just an individual sport. You need the support of your family and friends to go do the miles. But then you also need a team of professionals that you can tap into for education.
Yeah.
You'll learn it eventually, but the sooner you can learn it, the better.
Yes. Maybe not the hard way.
Yeah.
That's my goal with these workshops, is really to try and provide as much, information from the educated side of things, bringing those professionals in, bringing the experts in that field, and giving people the tools, hopefully as unbiased as we can, to at least say, here are the options out there, pick and choose, see what you like and what you don't like. But sometimes it can be overwhelming, and I don't want people to be deterred because they feel like they're getting thrown so much information. So my hope with these workshops is to consolidate and kind of put everything in a nice package for runners, whether that be people who are new to running or people who, have been running their whole life.
Yeah.
So it makes me really excited to talk to people such as yourself, because I do not know everything. I know what I know, and I can help educate in that sense, as far as physical therapy and run coaching, but there's so much more to running than that. So it's nice to educate myself as well as everyone else.
Yeah.
Another one of my questions I had was, do you recommend taking this specific runner's multivitamin year round, or just if you're training for a race?
Yes, year round. I think everybody should take a multivitamin year round. If you're training for a race, I don't think that doesn't mean you need to take double the amount of multivitamin. I think just having that as your daily part of a habit. It's already hard enough, I think, for people to start having a habit like that. And so that's probably, that I would say that is generally a good idea. I had a question for you about nutrition. Has there been any tip that, anything that you do in particular that you think is a really good nutritional tip that has helped in your lifestyle?
Yes. So specifically training for, I'm running the New York Marathon this November. And as I mentioned to you earlier, I'm really trying to take a look into my own nutrition, my own fueling strategies, and really making sure I'm staying well hydrated and drinking enough water before my runs, not just after. I think a lot of people worry about the recovery, but not so much what you're doing before. And we've talked about this before, but life gets in the way. My focus is on the kids in the morning time, and I don't necessarily fuel how I should be. So especially with those runs that I know are going to be harder, I know are going to be longer, I try and make sure that I eat something, or I have something with, a little bit of carb or protein, whatever the case may be, before I go. I used to just do every run fasted. I would get up in the morning, wouldn't even have anything to drink and run. And they weren't quality runs. We kind of call them like trash miles or garbage miles. You go out there and you just feel, ugh, for lack of a better word. So I think just trying to make sure I'm eating more regularly and fueling with things that are going to give me the energy that I need for the runs has been super helpful.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Every December they have a big conference in Austin, which is where all the running stores, all the specialty running stores come to. And then they celebrate the top 100 in the country. It's a lot of fun. But you can often go there as a vendor. And I went there last year, and nobody that I talked to carried a multivitamin inside any of their running stores, because most of the nutrition category was focused on electrolytes. They were focused on, gels and goos and things like that, because most of the nutrition is focused on what I call kind of race day. It's like
absolutely, that specific run or that specific hour during the day.
And that is where, we were talking before recording about the things that you kind of learn in your running journey. And I feel like there's a natural cycle where when you do start thinking about nutrition, the first thing you think about is exactly what you're saying, right? Okay, I need to be hydrated throughout the day. I need to be fueling during my runs. And then what I feel like often happens is people say, okay, I've heard about this thing called carb loading. So 3 days before the race, let me start thinking about what I'm eating outside of my runs. And so then people pay a lot more attention to what's their macro mix for that window.
Yeah.
And what I am trying to encourage, and what I think a lot of running stores as well, in terms of different talks that I personally get to do at some of the shops now, but also on, great events like this, is that, well, what if you thought about nutrition all the time, right? Yeah. And we didn't just focus on nutrition the hour before we ran or the 3 days before race day, but what if we focused on the 365 days throughout the training year? Like, what would that look like? And how might that help you? And I think as you age, you almost are forced to do that, because it's hard to run if you haven't been treating your body well for the 12 hours ahead of time, whether that be alcohol intake or what you ate for dinner. And so I think eventually people realize they have to think about those things. And wow, if we could only think about them sooner. But
and
exciting.
Your body can compensate very, very well up to a certain point. And that's usually the point where we start seeing people in physical therapy. Or we, say the weekend warriors, the people that go out and think that they can jump around and run around like they were 20 again. You see that a lot. But I should also mention that this cycle or this training time around, I have been taking a supplement and a multivitamin, and I have been taking yours for the last few weeks. And I think it's a combination, right? I don't think there's just one thing that you do in your training that's, that's it. That's exactly, what's turned everything around. I think it's a combination and more of a holistic, multidisciplinary approach. But again, that was something that I was lacking before. I was making sure that I was fueling myself throughout the day, throughout my training cycle. Overall, I feel so much better prepared this time around. Again, like you said, you learn from those mistakes, but I sure hope that I can help people maybe not make those mistakes in the first place, and give them the tools that they need.
Yeah. And one more thing that I was thinking about is that my own personal journey with physical therapy, there was a time where I was skeptical. I'm like, physical therapy, what is that about? But then there's always something that happens, I feel like, where an injury or something happens. And my running coach said, hey, have you ever been to a physical therapist? I'm like, why would I go to a physical therapist? I know everything. I can watch it on YouTube, right? I have a foam roller. I got this. And I was having this nagging ankle injury for months. And I just figured, hey, that's just the cost of running, right? That's just what it's like. And so I went to my physical therapist in Atlanta, and he didn't even look at my ankle. He was like, hey, I think that's a symptom of something else. And I was like, what are you talking about? My ankle hurts. And it set off this long journey now for many years of realizing that I had muscular imbalances on one side of my leg that was causing me to change my gait to compensate it, because I was telling my body I still wanted to run. They're like, fine, but you're going to have to use muscles that maybe shouldn't be using as much. Yep. It's going to cause issues. And it opened up the world of strength training. What am I doing to also strength train, not just run 7 days a week? Are we lifting weights? Are we doing other weight-bearing exercises, things that I never considered before? Are we doing the right stretches? Are we doing the right fascia release? Like all these things that I feel like you don't know about until you actually start opening up and exploring. And these are all, rolling on a foam roller isn't going to make me run a minute faster, but it may help me run longer. And it's one of many things, like taking a multivitamin, like going get a massage, that all these things kind of compile up. And as you get more running wisdom, you realize that having a running coach and having a physical therapist is just as important as having a training plan.
Yeah. You got to look at the big picture with all of this. So I did see that you have a gummy version. Is there any difference between the regular multivitamin and the gummy, or is it just the form that it's in?
It is very different.
Okay.
The regular tablet is a whole food tablet. So it has 42 fruits and vegetables. And then the rest of the multivitamin is encapsulated within it. And it is a lot more concentrated. We were talking about the percent daily values before. The gummy, just because of its gelatin form, it's hard to put as much in there unless the gummy becomes the size of like a lacrosse ball. So the biggest difference is it has the same idea of making it different than other gummies on the market. So compared to other gummies, it has the same properties of being more engineered for a runner. So if you prefer to take a gummy, this gummy is more engineered to the needs of a runners with the vitamin Bs, the antioxidants, that blends. But compared to the whole food tablet, which is what I recommend, it is much less. So better than a gummy in terms of being engineered for a runner. And it has 50% sugar than the ones that you typically find in the grocery store, which was personally important to me. So it may not be like taking as candy as much, but.
Yeah. And I do have to ask, I did not necessarily look up before I took the vitamin, what possible side effects there might be. For example, I noticed that my urine was bright yellow after taking it. Again, I don't have a lot of experience taking supplements and multivitamins. So is there anything that you're like, hey, watch out for this? It's okay if it happens, but just be aware.
I used to know someone that worked with Johnson & Johnson. They worked on the Listerine brand. And I used to say, man, Listerine, I like taking it, but it really burns my mouth because of the alcohol. And he's like, people love the burn because that's how you know it's working. And I always thought that was interesting. If you take any multivitamin that contains vitamin B, especially vitamin B2, your urine will be a darker yellow. The reason for that is vitamin B2 is riboflavin. Flavin is the Latin word for flavus, which is yellow. And it was the first vitamin discovered because it has that characteristic yellow color. And subsequently, Nobel Prize was awarded because of that, because you were able to discover it. So any multivitamin that has vitamin B2 will cause that if you have an excessive amount in your body. It just is excreted, it's water soluble. If you aren't as hydrated as you should be, that also intensifies the color. And so there are periods where maybe it's darker yellow, maybe it's some periods where it's not, but perfectly normal with any multivitamin.
All right.
And as my friend would say, that's how you know it's working.
Yeah. And it's definitely darker first thing in the morning when obviously I haven't drank as much water and then tapers off, but felt like that was important to share. That was a surprise to me. And it might be to someone else who's also new to the game.
What I'll also say is that my particular product, the recommendation is to take 2 a day. Some of our runners take 2 at once. If you don't want that to happen, you could spread them out throughout the day, and then that would probably solve it as well.
Okay. So if someone's interested, where can they find your vitamin? Where can they purchase?
The best place is to go to our website, which is peregrune.com, Peregrune, Peregrune Falcon, but with run in it. Don't go to Gap Vitamin. That doesn't exist anymore.
Nope.
That would be the best place to purchase it. Or we're also on Amazon, which makes things easier for people.
Yes. Yeah. Everyone loves Amazon. What does the future look like for Peregrune?
Really for me, as I mentioned, I was never trying to start a business. I created these 48 bottles 7 years ago just so I had a 2-year supply. I never thought anyone would purchase it. I was never trying to be a business owner. I was never trying to be an entrepreneur. I was an engineer. This isn't what I was trying to go do. But then I've gotten all these stories over the years, right? We had runners that just completed the Chicago Marathon. We have another runner that is in his 60s who's about to run his 1,000th race ever.
Wow.
We have a runner that just got done doing the Leadville 100, the Moab 240. And so I get all these stories over the years of people that maybe have been running a long time and now they're still chasing running goals. I get stories from people that are, dealing with loss in their family, and running has been an element that's kept them going through that. There's just been this community that's been developed. And so really what I've discovered is that I want more people to learn about our product. And so really it's just about awareness. We've helped thousands and thousands of runners, and I always feel like people should know about us, but they don't. And so that's part of the journey, is just going to conferences, having great talks with people in the community, and just letting people know. That's sort of it.
Great. And for people who are going to be at the running workshop, I will have more information on the product, and I'll be able to pass that out to people who are going to be there. If I can't answer any questions, I will refer you back to George. But thank you so much for talking with me and kind of giving us the background and explaining. I think my research science mind of things really enjoys looking at the science and the research and the background. And I think because you have that, it gives a little more weight to it, right? You're not just trying to sell a product. You made this product. You believe you did all the work to get it here. So it's really great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure.